You alluded to the Tea Party movement and its activities out there. Think about the Tea Party movement for a moment from a constitutional perspective and perhaps from Tocqueville's perspective. Should we embrace it, ignore it, or condemn it?
I think the Tea Party activists embody the ideal that Tocqueville championed most, because in Democracy in America, Tocqueville writes that in no other country has the principle of activism and association been more successfully used than in the United States. And the Tea Party activists embody this ideal of association because they're coming together to protest what they view as tyrannical actions of the national government.
I disagree. I find that Tocqueville would be very, very sad with the condition with the Tea Party in the United States today. Even though the Tea Party does spark some civil discourse, the problem is that even though its core is legitimate, the arms that reach out to the people are largely misinformed. In one study conducted at a major Capitol Hill demonstration, the protesters were asked the amount of federal taxes taken in as a percentage of the national GDP. A correct answer would range between 8 to 16%, but the answers given were between 40 to 42%. So through this, we can see that the large misinformation given to the public takes away civil discourse from the American public.
However, looking at the simple fact that our founders would have agreed with this perception and this movement, the Tea Party, because James Madison addressed in Federalist Paper number 10 that the most important aspect of this country is to have factions so that the majority doesn't infringe upon the rights of the minority.
Thank you. And I'd like you to address sort of the vibrant democracy in terms of the fact that it seems like a large disproportionate amount of wealth is within the top earning bracket. The lower class seems to be growing and the middle class seems to be squeezed in the center. I'd like you to hear just your opinion on how that, how the government has sort of tried to prevent that and ask you if it's actually working.
Well, in economics, socioeconomic disparities within the citizenry of a country is measured in the Gini coefficient. The United States currently has a Gini coefficient of 0.40, and this is in the acceptable inequality range. And in this acceptable inequality range, economists say that countries ought to shoot for this range in order to maximize both equality of opportunity and equality of condition. The fact is that when countries try to maximize equality of condition, they lose the equality of opportunity because they minimize the competition between two warring factions. In the United States, with education, for example, the fact that we don't have equality of condition leads to more equality of opportunity.
I believe that the recent healthcare bill that was passed is an example of the government trying to lessen the gap between the rich and the poor. And they're trying to help out those who cannot afford healthcare, and they're trying to provide healthcare for everyone so that there may not be such a big gap between the rich and the poor.
I would disagree with Andrew and say this economic inequality is significantly affecting our educational system negatively. We can see the United States Department on Education put out a statistic showing that the average funding gap between districts with the top 25% economic bracket and the ones with the bottom 25% economic bracket is over $1,300 per student.
In regards to participation, there's electoral participation and non-electoral participation. So whether you are rich or poor in this country, you do have a political say in our system. And you can join the non-electoral participation aspect through non-governmental organizations or directly influence our legislative process through electoral participation.
I'd like to take you back to the Constitution and ask you the question of in what ways, if any, does the Constitution promote either equal opportunity or equality of condition? In what ways might legislative action or judicial action have produced either of those desideratum?
The First Amendment in the Constitution guarantees the right to speech, press, and religion. And most specifically, the freedom of the press allows for greater equality of opportunity because it keeps the public informed and well aware of what is out there and what is available. Furthermore, the 16th Amendment, which allows for the graduated income tax cylinder, also assures equality of both opportunity and condition because it gives a sense of fairness to what you give as a portion of your income.
I believe that the 14th Amendment, which guarantees everyone the equal right to vote, I believe that this enables equality of opportunity because everyone is able to have a say in the government.
Well, to add on to Kathy's point, additionally in the 14th Amendment, we see the due process and equal protection clauses, and this leads to a lot of the equality of opportunity that we see in the United States government. But to answer your second question as well, legislative actions would include things like No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top. And Race to the Top specifically doesn't force states to go to a particular standard, but gives them a financial incentive to approve if they want this federal block grant.
The judiciary branch has also been influential. Supreme Court decisions such as Plyler versus Doe in 1982 ensured public education to even children of illegal immigrants, ensuring that everyone has the right to public education regardless of background.
And going back to my previous point, I'm sorry, the 14th Amendment protects everyone equally under the law.
You're sitting in the seats that some of the 80,000 lobbyists sit in when they try to put pressure on the Congress. And on one hand, we as a society don't particularly like interest groups as an organized entity out there. On the other hand, Tocqueville talked about the United States being a nation of joiners, and he liked the idea of people joining together. Now, where do you come down on the rights and the roles of lobbyists and interest groups?
I don't think Tocqueville would have predicted that in today's time, we'd have 57% of the money going into lobbying coming from corporate interest firms. Today, we can see through the example of Hewlett-Packard in 2004, who dramatically increased their lobbying arm in Washington and was consequently able to pass a piece of legislation that allowed them to bring over profits overseas at dramatically lower tax rates. Essentially shows that corporations are often able to spend a lot of money through lobbying and get the results that they want. This doesn't always help the American public, but the individuals don't have the money to speak to the government. So ultimately, lobbying harms civil discourse.
In addition, Tocqueville definitely would be disappointed. I agree with my colleague, because he believed that in America, everyone had a voice, that there was not the aristocracy that he saw in the European nations. So in looking to that, he would look at today and see that money is a negative aspect of politics, because it gives corporations the idea essentially of all money that they can spend.
I would have to argue that lobbyists in some way are a good thing, because John Stuart Mill, in his essay on liberty, states that we cannot limit people's we have to allow everybody to speak, because by allowing everybody to speak, we're able to foster a greater truth. And I believe lobbyists are able to contribute to establishing this truth.